Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about heirloom seeds. Now, I just couldn't help but show off. This is what I hold my seeds in. I just think it's so beautiful. And so I just kind of wanted to show it, brag, I guess, a little bit. Forgive me for it, okay? But as you can see, this is what I hold my seeds in. Now, I want to talk about heirloom seeds, and I would please ask you to listen to this entire video because I'm going to give some really important information at the end that could directly affect your heirloom seeds and they could end up completely sterile, useless. Now, I'm going to explain that I personally prefer hybrids. I'm not saying that, now as you can see here, I've got lots of heirloom seeds, but I live in a very hot, dry climate. And hybrids do better. Of course, they're not GMO. Some people think they are, but they're not. But some people just don't like them because they're a hybrid. Well, if we get into a super bad situation in this country, you are going to want to be in a position to grow as much food as possible with as little water as possible and as little space as possible. And hybrids are that solution. Hybrids many times outperform heirlooms, immensely. So I just want you to think about that. I know there's some people that are really die-hard heirloom people, and that's okay. But in a normal situation, I would say it's okay. But if things get really super, super bad and water becomes an extreme issue, what if they take your water from you? What if they start to claim water, that your water is their water, even if you've got a well? Then what? So think of other possibilities. We can't box ourselves into just one situation in life. We have to think outside the box and think of other ways. Hybrids are just better performers. They really are. I have been able to grow hybrid tomatoes. It's called Super Fantastic. And I could get just as many tomatoes off of 4 plants as I could 8 of an heirloom. Okay? And in a really bad situation, that counts. If our weather gets as bad as they claim and we go through as many droughts as we supposedly are going to go through, and many areas are, heirlooms are very delicate. They don't hold up as good, and nor do they produce as good. Once again, I will say I'm not trying to talk you out of heirlooms, but what I'm trying to talk you in to think of both possibilities of what could happen. You may be against hybrid seeds because you think they're not the right kind of seed. They're not as nutritional, as they should be. But food is better than no food at all. And heirlooms, to me, are just super finicky. They just are. Okay? But once again, we're all different. We all think different. So doing something is more important than doing nothing. And I've always said that. It's not how you do it so much that gets you to the end, maybe. You may do things different than me, but as long as you get there is what's important. Now, I want to talk to you about what I've seen in my research that lets me believe that heirlooms could be in very big danger. Some time ago, I read an article, and it's been years ago, about some farmers in another country that were growing, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was wheat. I read articles. I don't pay a lot of attention as to where or what necessarily it is, but I chuck away the important part into the back of my brain and I hold it there. But anyhow, they were growing. I believe it was wheat, like I said. And now these were heirloom seeds. These were seeds they saved from year to year. And they planted it. They harvested it, and everything was fine. But there was a company out there that was wanting to sell seeds. Well, they surely weren't going to sell it to these farmers because these farmers had their own seeds because they've been saving them every year. And they'd done just fine. So guess what they did? And they flew over their fields and sprayed them. Now, these farmers didn't know. They had no clue. I mean, lots of us see planes go by. We don't know. We have no clue what's going on. And the next year, when they decided to plant their seeds, a lot of their seeds didn't come up. And a lot of them came up but didn't produce anything. In other words, it had no fruit to it. And so when the year was over and they began to harvest, guess what happened? They didn't have enough, and they didn't have enough seeds left over to be able to plant for the following year. Now, why? Because the spray that was sprayed on those plants caused the seeds to be sterile. It caused a lot of the seed to become sterile and not produce. This was heirloom seeds, okay? And so what they had to do, the farmers, they had to go to this big company to get seeds to plant for the following year. But now these farmers were poor. They didn't have cash to go buy these seeds, so what they put up as the collateral for the seeds was their farms. And their seeds didn't do that great. And so they really didn't get the crops they should get. And many of those farmers lost their land. That's right. They lost it to the big companies. Now, I chucked that away in the back of my head because, hey, I'm one of these, I'm not too sure, about things that I read. But then as time went by and I began, I garden and I do put heirloom seeds in. And there's a particular heirloom seed that I like a lot, and it's a particular squash. And I planted it one year and nothing came up. I mean, nothing came up. And that shocked me. And I thought, oh, birds got it, or some mice or some animal come along and, carried the seed off and ate it. Well, I went to the store and I got more of this particular seed, came home to plant it, and as I began to dig around in the dirt to plant it, there was the seed. It was there. But you know what I found out? It looked extremely shriveled up. And when I opened it up, there was nothing on the inside of these seeds. There was nothing there. And I thought, oh, wow, that's strange. Well, I went ahead and I planted my seeds. And some of them did come up. And some of them were very sickly and didn't produce. They just did not produce anything. Now, the squash was all growing in the same spot right next to each other. And they just didn't produce. And I had never had that happen before. And I thought that odd. Well, there's a particular heirloom seed that I like to grow, and it's a tomato. And 3 beautiful plants I had. 2 of them never put any tomatoes on them at all. None. Big, beautiful, bushy plants, but with absolutely no tomatoes. But one did. It was called Brandywine. Now, one of them did. It had tomatoes on it, but the other 2 had none. Then I had another friend that was telling me about her mother who had put a bunch of heirloom tomato plants in the ground. All them tomato plants, not one of them put tomatoes on them. Not one. Well, that bothered her, so she, of course, called the company wanting to know what the heck was going on. And they said, oh, well, you must have got all the male plants, all the male seeds. I'm sitting there going, huh? Are you telling me that a company that deals in heirloom seeds sends you all male plants and no female seeds with it? That don't make sense. The answer just did not make sense. When the seeds go in, I mean, good grief, male and female seeds get mixed in together, and you're telling me that this is your answer? Oh, well, it must have been a packet with just all male seeds in it. Okay. But like I said, I began to think back about what I had read. And I said to myself, is this a possibility that they're already spraying those fields? Because you got to remember, these companies are growing plants for seeds so they can sell it to the public. And I thought to myself, are they already spraying their fields? And that's why this is happening? Do they know, or do they not even care? Maybe they know and they don't care. But I do know one thing that crossed my mind. I do believe that they can do that. And what better way to control the homesteaders that are living far out of the city and feeding their families from what they grow? Now, if they want to get them under control, how could they do that? Because after all, if you're independent, growing your own food, it makes it really hard to control you. But if they made your seeds sterile and you couldn't grow what you eat, and then you had to come under control to what the government told you, or you don't eat, or your children don't eat. Now, I'm not saying it's true, but I'm not saying let me put it this way. Would you put it past them to do it? I wouldn't. Because I used to be naive enough to think, oh no, they wouldn't do something like that. I'm not that naive anymore. So all I can say is maybe keep both. Because if they sprayed the hybrid, it wouldn't make any difference anyhow, because it's not something you could save the seed. And at least maybe you would have something. Or for some reason, something happened and you lost your hybrid seeds. Not your hybrid, but not your hybrid, but your heirloom seeds. If something happened and you lost them, and you couldn't get them anymore, at least maybe you could fall back on the hybrid seeds, even if the weather got bad enough. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to talk you out of your heirloom seeds, but what I'm trying to say is be prepared with both kinds, because you never know what could happen. You could have a very bad year. They may stop selling seeds to the public. They may come to a point and say, no, we don't want these people growing their own food anymore. And they may stop selling them. Now, some people have, gathered their own seeds that they've been growing for years. But what if something happened to those heirloom seeds and they didn't produce? What if they got a mold or something happened? It's just something to think about. Always be prepared both ways. God bless and have a blessed day.